The moment she left me for him, I knew it was over. But what I didn't know was how far she would go to regret it. Until the day she came back, eyes filled with tears, and whispered, "I made a mistake. The one I've always loved is you." But by then, it was too late. The man she chose over me wasn't the one I had to worry about. It was the pride and secrets buried deep within our past that would unravel everything. And I was about to discover the lengths they'd go to in order to tear me down, starting with the man who had once been my greatest rival, and now was about to become my greatest threat. Chapter 1. George stood tall at the Wong Group's grand event, his family's legacy now on his shoulders. His calm demeanor hid the undercurrents of frustration swirling within him. He had just become the heir of the Wong family, a position his grandfather had chosen for him after years of hard work and relentless determination. But at that moment, his mind wasn't on the prestigious ceremony or the responsibilities that awaited him. It was on Willow. 5 years ago, she had been his fiancée. They had been engaged since childhood, and though George had never been particularly in love with her, he respected her. But everything changed when she met Makoto, a poor academic star, who treated money like it was meaningless. When she fell in love with him, George's world turned upside down. She broke off their engagement and eloped with Makoto. She believed in his ideals of love, untainted by wealth and societal expectations. Standing in the same room 5 years later, George saw Willow again. She looked exhausted, her heavy makeup barely concealing the signs of sleepless nights. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked at George. "I regret it," she whispered. "The one I've always loved is you." Before George could respond, Makoto stormed in, furious. "You think just because you've got a bit of money, you can seduce someone else's wife?" He was shouting, pointing at George. The tension in the room was palpable. George's assistant immediately intervened, and Makoto was escorted out. Despite his outward composure, George couldn't help but feel the bitterness of the past and the bitter sting of Willow's betrayal. Chapter 2. The family dynamics were strained. George had grown up with the weight of his family's history hanging over him. His father had come from humble beginnings, and through sheer determination, he had made something of himself. But it wasn't enough to save his father from infidelity. George's mother, devastated by the affair, eventually succumbed to a breakdown that left George with a broken family. However, there was a silver lining to George's troubled childhood. His engagement to Willow had restored his grandfather's interest in him. The Liu family, with whom the Wong family had once been allied, had a significant presence in the business world. The alliance through marriage would cement George's place as the future leader of the Wong Group. But this wasn't a story of romance. It was about power, legacy, and business. Yet, even as the engagement was sealed, George couldn't help but feel a pang of regret. The love he had once felt for Willow was replaced by an unspoken bitterness. She was no longer the girl he had known. She was someone who had chosen ideals over reality. Chapter 3. George's thoughts were interrupted by Makoto's accusations. "You're just a rich kid," he spat. "What do you know about love? All you care about is wealth and status." George had long ago stopped caring about people like Makoto. He was a proud man. His pride had led him to reject the comfort and support of Willow's family. His stubborn refusal to accept their help had led him to a small job in a publishing house, earning a pittance compared to the life he could have had. His pride kept him isolated from everyone, even his own family, and it was this very pride that led to his downfall. But George couldn't help but admire Makoto's ideals, even if he found them foolish. To choose poverty and struggle for the sake of pride and principle was something George couldn't understand, but it was a choice Makoto had made, and now it had cost him everything. Chapter 4. Anna entered George's life shortly after Willow's departure. She wasn't like Willow. She didn't believe in romantic ideals. She was pragmatic, intelligent, and business savvy. She understood the importance of alliances, of power, and of using what you had to get ahead. Anna's presence was a balm for George's wounded pride. They both shared the same cold, rational approach to relationships. She wasn't looking for love. She was looking for stability and mutual benefit. George respected her for that. They weren't lovers, at least not at first. They were partners, two people who understood the importance of power, business, and securing their futures. But as they spent more time together, George began to see a different side of Anna. She wasn't just a businesswoman. She was someone who genuinely cared for him. She had supported him when everyone else had turned their backs. And slowly, he found himself trusting her, not just with his career, but with his heart. Chapter 5. At a business event, George's world collided with Willow's once again. She stood there, alongside Makoto, as if nothing had changed. George could feel the tension building in the air as he avoided her gaze. His anger flared, but he kept his composure. He couldn't afford to let his emotions dictate his actions. But as the evening went on, Willow approached him. "George, I regret it," she said again, her voice trembling. I've always loved you. Can we try again? George's blood ran cold. You don't get to ask for another chance, he snapped. You made your choice. Don't come back now because things aren't going the way you thought. Makoto stood beside her, his pride clearly wounded. He was still the same man, proud, stubborn, and angry. You think you can just swoop in and take her back? He yelled. She's mine now.
I never imagined this would happen. Not to me. Not to us. Emily and I, well, we were inseparable. High school sweethearts. The kind of love people write about in books. Or at least, I thought it was. Lately, though, things had changed. I'd been so wrapped up in work, trying to build something for us, that I didn't notice the small things slipping away. At first, it was just a feeling. Emily wasn't the same. She was distant, her smile seemed forced, and she always had her phone on her. It wasn't like her. We'd always been open, so why was she suddenly so secretive? Are you okay? I asked one night, watching her stare blankly at the screen of her phone while we ate dinner. She glanced up quickly, her expression tight. Yeah, I'm fine. Just tired, that's all. But I could tell something was off. I had no idea that night would be the start of the unraveling. The next few days felt like they were dragging on forever. Emily became more withdrawn, more distracted. I tried to talk to her about it, but she brushed me off each time. You're just overthinking things, she'd say, flashing a forced smile. But her eyes, they didn't match her words. There was something dark behind them. I felt like I was losing her, but I couldn't figure out why. Then, last Tuesday, it happened. I came home early from work, hoping to surprise her. I expected to find her at the kitchen table, maybe with a glass of wine, but instead, I found her in the living room, her phone in her hand, whispering into it. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the moment I heard her say, "Yeah, Ryan, I miss you too," my heart dropped. Ryan. The name hit me like a ton of bricks. I stood frozen in the doorway, my breath caught in my chest. My mind raced, trying to piece it together. Who was Ryan? Why was she whispering to him? Her tone, so soft, so intimate, it wasn't just a friend.
Anna, on the other hand, had stood by him when no one else had. I'll let you in on a secret, George said to Anna one night, as they sat together. I don't need love. I need respect. And you've given me that. You've always been by my side. Anna smiled gently, her hand resting on his. And I'll always be here, George. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. Conclusion. George's story was one of triumph. But it was also a story of growth. He had learned that success wasn't just about power or wealth. It was about the people you surrounded yourself with. Willow's idealism had led her to ruin, while George's pragmatism had brought him success. But it was Anna's loyalty and strength that ultimately gave him peace. Together, they stood ready to face whatever the future held, not as individuals, but as partners. And in that partnership, George found something he had never truly understood: the value of trust, respect, and shared goals.